Good evening and welcome to Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast. Although the token is large but not unnecessarily so, because that is inefficient and not of benefit to the state.
Keep this going, man.
And also it does not denote first player. For in communist paradise, no first player, everybody equal player. And so, welcome to the show.
You better keep this going all the way through.
I'm not planning to keep this up going.
Come on, you broke character.
I'm starting to sound more increasingly like a Jewish vampire. Welcome to the show.
Yes,
tonight I'm going to suck your blood.
That's stolen straight at the Simpsons right there.
Well, I thought I'd end it on that.
Just as a translation, this is a Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast, and this is episode 6, the Cold War special.
Yeah, as the music and
Euan's
just
weird
general
accent
ramblings at the start should denote. I always think it's interesting that, like, for people in the West, it's quite easy to sort of denote Cold War things using certain, you draw like a hammer and sickle or something like that.
Yeah.
And people are right, okay, like, or you play some Russian music and everybody's like, okay, yeah, I get that. That's about the Cold War because it's a Russian thing.
Aye.
What do the Russians do for the same sort of thing? Somebody just draw a cheeseburger,
I'm not entirely sure.
or a golden eagle in soft
Kiss
focus.
a picture of Stalin, possibly. I'm not really sure.
Maybe they stick to their own culture as well.
I don't want to ask them.
It's like, they associate, what music do they associate? Bon Jovi or something like that.
Is that the Cold War music for Russians?
Yeah.
Is Bon Jovi?
Yeah.
Even though he's Canadian, is he not? No, he's not. He's American. He's American.
I'm
thinking of Bryan
in
Adams.
Russia, he's probably tarred with the same brush as the Americans. If he's gonna turn up on MTV,
That's
it's
it.
got to take everything that comes with it.
I think maybe that's what their symbol is.
That's
Maybe
what
it might be MTV. It might be Video Killed the Radio Star. I think that's possibly what it is.
That's Well, we'll come to that one later.
Yeah, I believe that Video Killed the Radio Star makes an appearance in one of these games.
It does. Probably does.
Probably
does.
I'm just assuming.
Yeah, you have to.
It's in that vein.
So we're going to talk about games that have are set in history and from the world of video games and board games.
Yep.
That sort of deal with certain aspects of the Cold War. It's a hastily cobbled together theme, really.
Now
that I think about it.
Basically, we had one game which is Cold War themed. Decided, bugger it, let's just do a Cold War
anything
thing.
that was even tangentially
And then it all
related.
became just loosely related things.
Yeah. So, if we've nothing else to announce at the top of the show here, then I think we can move safely and swiftly on.
Are you done with your Russian accent? I think it was.
Again, Oibel, the Jewish vampire. He may make a reappearance. I don't know.
Excellent. Right. Well, let's move on. We're going to start off with video game. No, we're not. We're going to start off with board games this time.
Yeah.
I think. Start off with board
straight
games.
into board games.
Okay, so we're going to talk about two very similar games.
Yeah.
The first one being 1960, The Making of the President, and the other one being Twilight Struggle, which is the number one rated game on Board Game Geeks right now, which we're both quite surprised about.
It was a bit, I couldn't really see it myself.
Aye, well,
It's not that it's a bad game. It's just it's an interesting choice.
I find it quite weird that there's a 2-player game that's top of the thing. I think that's the thing that surprised me the most about it, not the actual game itself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these are like I say, very similar games. They do have their differences. The first one that we're going to talk about is 1960 Making of the President, because that's a sort of simpler one. So compared to Twilight Struggle, I think, which is much more sort of complex and involved. So in 1960, it's a 2-player game, and one player's playing Kennedy, and the other player gets to party with Nixon. Do you want to party with Nixon?
You get to be Nixon.
You get to
play
be
with
Nixon, yeah. And what happens in 1960? It's about the 1960 presidential election, and you have a board which has the map of the United States on it, which has got the 50 states, split into the sort of 4 regions. So you've got the West, the Midwest, the East, and the South. And each sort of state has a little box in it for putting cubes into, and the states are worth a certain number of election points at the end of the game. And basically, whoever wins the most points through winning the states wins the game. And you can change history in this. You can let Nixon win the 1960 election if you want. It's probably a terrible idea.
You can start getting Nixon to care about civil rights if you want.
But that's true. You can do that in this game. So, Euan, tell me about the cards. This is a card-driven game. How does that work?
Well, essentially, you've got 5 rounds at the start. Well, there's 8 overall, I think, something like that. Or maybe more.
There's some number of rounds.
Well, you start off with the first 5 are essentially just your campaigning rounds, and they all play basically the same. You've got you get 5 cards in each round, and there's in each turn.
You can play 5 cards.
Yeah,
I think you get 6.
And you've also got your Kennedy or Nixon card, which you can just flip for points,
which we were referring to as the Kennedy or Nixon rampage.
Yeah, it did generally turn out to be a bit of a rampage. Essentially, the cards you've got they're broken up into, you've got your points you can take from it, or you can take the event.
Yep.
And the event will be some event in history. A mechanic something that shares with Twilight Struggle, which does a lot of that. You can use your points for campaigning, so you can bomb about the board, building up support in cities. You can also use it to place on issues, so you can sort of build up your media presence over various issues. There's defence, the economy, and again civil rights.
Yeah.
And there's certain rewards for basically winning those each turn. Essentially, if you're more in control, if you're more on top of the issues,
you get momentum markers and stuff. And
so when you play the events, you've got symbols on the cards which represent either Democrat or Republican. So the events will affect either player depending on what the symbol is there. So you can have ones in your hand that might be of no benefit to you, but they will be benefit to the other player. So you can, if you play that card for the points, for example, they have a chance, unless you veto it, to use that event to their gain. You've got these momentum markers which you can use to you have to place 2 down, I think it is, if you're...
Yeah, if you play the card, you have to place 2 down to stop the other person from triggering the event.
If you don't do that, they can spend 1 momentum marker to trigger it for themselves.
Yeah.
So there's an element of trying to be careful with your card play in these over these 5 rounds of each turn.
So that didn't really come up that much when we played it.
No,
we were being quite careful about our card play, I think.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like the very last round of the game that I ended up with a massive hand of Nixon cards that were of very little benefit to me, but I managed to be quite sly about how I played them and using my momentum markers and stuff like that. Because some of them were really powerful as well. Yeah,
it's getting those sort of things out there. I mean, there's a lot of ones where, if you play them at the right time, where this maybe...
Yeah, it has like minimal effect,
It's going to be the best time to do it. And plus, you've also got your, as we were saying, the Nixon and Kennedy rampage cards, which might get you out of a tricky situation if you're...
That's it.
If you're stuck for cards.
So, I mean... Basically, the game is that you're just sort of running about the board and just sticking cubes around everywhere, aren't you? So you're basically just that.
You're just sticking cubes about America.
Just Nixon running around throwing cubes at people.
With not a care in the world.
And I mean, all that really happens is that when you play a card for its operation points and you decide that you're just going to stick some cubes into a state, if you're in that state, you just stick some cubes in. You can run around in whatever region that you're in for free.
Yeah.
If you want to cross into another region, it costs you one of your points that you're using, but it's not really a massive cost, to be honest. Unless you're trying to travel from the east to the west, in which case it's pretty hefty price.
It's going to take you a bit. You might as well try and do a bit of campaigning on the way.
That's it, aye. And you're just sort of sticking a cube in, and if you go into a state that the other person's got cubes in, if they're leading in that state, so they've got their cubes in it, and you want to put cubes in, you have to first spend your points to get rid of their cubes.
Yeah.
And then clear it off and put your own ones in, sort of thing. Yeah. So this is where we had a fight in New York, really, didn't we? Because New York's a hefty state. It's
worth
a hell of a lot of votes.
Well, the thing about that was that, over and above just sort of moving about and placing your tokens in, I mean, the cards sometimes will let you, like this one in particular, let me move Nixon into New York and take away support from you. Or,
it was crazy.
And there was a lot of cards, you could target specific states to try and get points out of them, or get support in them. But the other way you can influence states is right at the end of the game, but you've also got, before that, you've got a debate round.
Yeah, so I think that's the 6th round in the game.
After your
out of 9 or 10 or whatever, however many it is.
And you're building up to your debate round throughout the first 5 turns of the game as well, because you've usually got a card spare in your hand that'll have a symbol relating to
one of the issues.
There's again, it's the same. You've got the issues are defence, economy, and civil rights, and you can kind of deal with them throughout the game, but they'll come specifically into the debates.
Yeah.
Where you have to be prepared for them. So you want to try and put away cards that have got the symbol on with a high point number on it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's a kind of wee mini game that you play for the debates. So it's kind of interesting in this game, like the way that
it's just,
there's rounds that do different things. I mean, even the scoring round in itself is a part of the game.
I actually felt that was one of the most thematic parts about it because
you're using. I mean, I'm guessing it's based on the actual votes to state.
So it is.
The numbers for. I don't know how much they've changed over the years.
It does seem to be, because I think New York is worth like 45 votes, basically, or whatever they call it. I don't know what the actual proper term for it is. But yeah, the debates were interesting because you basically, you're just taking it how you should have 5 cards in your campaign strategy thing, so you only have you won't have 2 of every symbol basically for the issues. And then you're playing these cards down depending on the symbols on them, and then once one player has placed 2 symbols that are the same, that issue is then considered resolved. So if I've played 2 defence things, then the defence issue is resolved. You count up the number of points on those cards, count up how many points the other player played for that issue, and then you get a certain number of cubes depending on whether it was the first, second or third one resolved.
So you can put state support out onto the board.
It's basically free state support that you can just chuck in anywhere. And
well, the other thing about it is that the order that the debates are, each of the issues are resolved, determines how many.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. So it's
like this, it's the kind of thing that the last issue is going to be like the big sort of showcase thing, and that's winning on that issue is going to be more important. And once you've got the debates out of the way, you've got 2 more rounds of campaigning, which you're also doing a similar thing in preparing for, because you've got your campaign strategy folder is now what was your debate one, and you can prepare for certain states. You can
so the cards have got like states written on the bottom right, and that's only ever used in the election round. And so basically, if you can put 2 cards in the last 2 turns of the game, I think. So you should have 4 cards in your campaign strategy thing by the time the election starts. And whatever states you've put in to your campaign strategy thing, these you basically get a chance to win those states or win more cubes in that state sort of thing. Which like I say to you, is I found to be pretty more thematic sort of thing, because it's like the whole sort of surprise swing that you find in elections sometimes. So like I think I ended up winning, was it Ohio off you or something like that?
You did.
It was the only state in the West that won.
It had been weakened a bit and managed to take it, but well, it's thing though. I mean, it used it sort of. I was planning a final sort of push in New York, but it never quite came off.
I was going to do the same with you in Texas, but you actually ended up playing a Texas card as well, and you put yours in first, so I ended up completely losing out on Texas, which is one of the bigger ones again.
Yeah. So you basically do a check for each one of these you put out, and there's you've got your 2 different coloured cubes. Basically, there's a mix in the bag that'll be sort of building up over the game. So you draw 3. And the number of your coloured cubes you pull out will be what you put on. So I mean, there's checks like that throughout the game. I didn't find myself doing a huge amount of them.
We didn't really. You don't really. I think the main purpose of that is really just checking for initiative at the start of the round. So whoever wins the initiative gets to choose who goes first.
I mean, it was something I was thinking about a bit with the cards as well, because some of the cards will put more cubes into the bag.
That's right.
As time goes on, and I was kind of thinking about, well, if I play in these ones, I mean, you probably noticed I was trying to get more cubes in. You
were building up a hell of a lot of cubes in that bag, the Nixon bag,
and it always sort of came out. Yeah, basically, I made it a Nixon bag.
It was a Nixon bag.
It was meant to be a national bag, but you know.
They're called, like, what was it, rest cubes they called them? So
yeah,
Nixon was doing a lot of resting.
He was needing a rest, you know. He's not got the strong constitution of the young Kennedy.
That's it.
Although he does look, having seen some young pictures of him a bit younger, he does look uncannily like Jimmy Carr.
He does. You remember you pointing that out to me, and we were like, "Oh yeah, he does."
You see that photo in the front. If you get a chance, I would say at this point we probably would recommend this game.
I'm holding it up to the microphone.
So if you can have a look at that,
there you go.
You'll get an impression. But also maybe go out and get the game and have a look for yourself.
Weird.
And it's very Jimmy Carr like.
It is very Jimmy Carr.
I mean, don't go and buy the game. So don't go look at an image on Google. Buy
this game,
this board game.
And look at the picture on the front of the box.
Because the Google images are all grainy, really.
Aye,
because they put grain in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's I think that pretty much covers 1960 there.
Any thoughts you want to?
I actually didn't. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy this game. When I was given it by somebody. It was an unwanted gift, basically,
really?
And they basically gave it to me, saying, this isn't my type of game, and it really isn't his type of game. I could tell that by just by seeing the title on the box.
I think I know this.
And I just so I wasn't really sure what to think about it, and I knew it was kind of going to be similar to Twilight Struggle, which is a game that I've played 2 or 3 times now. Yeah. And really enjoyed, sort of thing. And I thought, if it's just going to be a knockoff of Twilight Struggle, then what's the point? But it turns out that it's actually its own game, really.
Yeah, I mean, it takes probably one central sort of idea from Twilight Struggle, but the rest, I mean,
the rest of it's pretty
does its
different,
own thing with. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it played thematically so strongly that we kind of playing through it felt quite.
I think my worry about the game, though, I mean, like I say, I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, but I don't know about the replayability value of it, for the sense that it does feel like the game might just, every single game of this might just be reduced into everybody fighting over, the 2 players fighting over New York and Pennsylvania.
I don't know, having played it now once, I'm like, there's other ways I could have gone with it. There's certain things I could have done better at certain times.
No, that's true, I suppose.
And that's the thing about it is it's a constantly shifting landscape that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's not just sort of area control sort of thing. You're not fighting a war. It's an election, and it can be a tricky thing. And it's like you really do have to try and sort of second guess your opponent while doing the best for yourself as well. I mean, as you said, I was running a fairly negative campaign.
The Nixon campaign was so negative.
But that's the way Nixon rolls.
Nixon was not going out to win votes for himself. He was going out to make sure Kennedy lost them. That was basically his strategy.
Some board game players are like that as well, So Nixon would be interested in a game of Railroad Tycoon.
Will we get him involved in one, will we?
Aye. Let's ring him up.
You want to party with Nixon?
I'm trying to have a rest token.
Right. Okay, so 1960. We'll do a rating now, or we'll rate both games when we're done. You want to do a rating now?
I'm happy to
do a rating now.
I'm happy to give it a rating now.
Okay.
I'm going to give it six. Frank Mankiewicz.
All right.
Who? He was a successful campaign
guy.
who actually, now that I think about it, was on Nixon's enemies list.
Was he?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of him.
He was just some bloke.
All right.
Hunter S. Thompson was a big fan of him, apparently. Or he certainly didn't think he was an arsehole, which is...
Which is high praise indeed.
Yeah, so if you take six people that aren't an arsehole, this game's about as good as that.
Well, I'm not going to... Right, I don't think I can say anything
I don't think...
rating.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think I explain my ratings enough. I just say words.
I don't think you need to. Man.
That was I felt better explained.
Excellent. Right, let's talk about Twilight Struggle now.
Okay.
Twilight Struggle, a very similar game. So this is the Cold War, basically. This is from 1945 to 1989. This is how the time period that takes place. So it's the US against the USSR, basically, and it's not a war game. It's a Cold War game, but it's not a war game. It's
that's the quality of difference, really.
That's it.
That you're having a Cold War. It's not like your old traditional war with cannon and horse and man with rifle and bayonet. Put all your men in Australia.
That's risk.
All right,
that's risk.
Oh, fair enough. But that's what risk is. What war's like. This is Twilight Struggle. This is.
I'm
what,
sure every soldier in the world would agree with you.
Yeah, put all your men in Australia, and then knock off for tea early.
Right. Focus, Euan. Focus. Right. So,
as you said, it was a Cold War.
Aye, Cold War. So it's the US versus the USSR. Again, it's played on a board, but put as 1960 as a map of the United States. The Twilight Struggle is the entire world.
Yeah.
So the whole world, and again, it's split down into the different sort of countries. Not every country. Some of them are grouped together, like some of the Western African countries and stuff. And I think like Benelux is one thing rather than having Belgium and Netherlands and Luxembourg.
I've always been confused by the term Benelux.
Man, it's just one of those weird things. I've never understood. I actually once asked a Dutch guy what it meant, and he looked at me like I punched him in the face or something and walked away.
It's probably because it's not something that they deal with.
I was just really confused. I just wanted to know.
Sometimes, children, when we're dealing with the Europeans, it's easier just to cram them all into one.
Anyway,
yeah.
So the idea is roughly the same. So it's got that same card-driven play.
Yeah.
It's pretty much identical, to be honest. So you've got your cards have got your operation points on it, which you can spend to put markers on the board and stuff.
You're putting influence into countries.
Basically, yep. Or they've got events on them. One of the big differences in this, whereas in 1960, like if you wanted to trigger an event that was yours, you had to spend a marker thing for it. There's none of that in Twilight Struggle. Basically, if you play an event which is one of your opponent's events, it triggers.
Yeah.
So you can't really prevent it.
This is the thing that sort of came up in 1960 that I was kind of starting to remember from Twilight Struggle was the way that the way the events kind of all came out were a lot more brutal in Twilight Struggle.
Oh,
like
yeah, totally.
You really just you had no choice in a lot of points, and we kind of got away with it a lot in 1960.
I think that's one of the things about Twilight Struggle. You kind of have to accept that the cards that you're going to play, are just you're going to be giving your opponent something.
Yeah.
So you do have to take that into account and just deal with it, sort of thing. So it's kind of weird that way because it's almost like every card is going to get played, almost like that. But some of the cards are neutral cards, or not actually. But I don't think there's very many of those. So like I'm saying, you use your cards as the events, or you can use them for the operation points. And like the operation points work slightly differently in this game compared to 1960.
Well, it is traditional sort of war game style movement. You have to move adjacent through countries.
That's it. So whereas in 1960 you could basically pump about the board and put your influence in wherever. In Twilight Struggle you can only really put stuff in adjacent to any countries that you already have influence in. So it does feel a bit more like you're expanding outwards sort of thing, so that you're moving out. But I mean, you start the game with influence in various places around the world, depending on who you are. So, like, the USSR has influence in North Korea, and what other places?
There are starting ones, like Cuba and
that's right, Cuba and like East Germany and stuff like that. Whereas like the US starts with influence in South Korea and South Africa and these
West
kind of
Germany.
places. Yeah, so you can just sort of expand out from these little points that you've got.
Yeah.
But there's a number of things that you can do with your points in this game. So like you can just stick some counters down, and the difference of this game is that there's not little cubes, and it's not just one person that can have influence in a place. Whereas in 1960 that was the case. In this game, there's each country has two boxes, one for the US and one for the USSR, and you can both have influence in the same country.
To represent you fighting proxy wars in
that's it, yeah,
in various countries.
And the countries have a stability number. So like if the stability number of a place is 3, so let's say like I think Denmark is 3, then you have to have that many points more than your opponent to control that country basically, and to have at least 3 as well. So if you have like if the USSR has 5 and the US has 1, then the USSR controls Denmark because they've got 3 more and it's at least 3.
I'd love to see the KGB files on attempting to destabilise Denmark.
In this game, man, you can do whatever you want. You can attempt to destabilise any country.
That is...
And that brings me on to the next bit, which is like the operation points can be used for coup attempts and realignment rolls, which are just... This game has got dice in it. And really, these are the only things you use the dice for.
I remember this now.
Yeah. And the realignment rolls are like... They're much easier than the coup attempts, but your realignment rolls basically remove your opponent's influence from a country. And it uses like the number of points on whatever card it is you've played, sort of thing. And the coup attempts are harder, but they let you add your own influence, as opposed to realignment, which doesn't. So realignment is it's more like the negative Nixon tactics, just removing influence. Whereas a coup attempt's more trying to take control of somewhere, but it's much harder to do. So.
You always sort of kick off little revolutions in South America.
Yeah. So. It's quite interesting that way, though, because that sort of brings out a little surprise moment sort of thing. Just like all of a sudden, this country has just completely flipped its allegiance, and things start to get a bit crazy from there, sort of thing.
Well, you've also got in this game, I suppose, because you're playing through the Cold War, you've got the constant threat of nuclear
war, yeah. I was just about to move on to that. So there is a DEFCON status. So it goes from 5 down to nuclear war, basically, which is 1. And if at any point you manage to get the DEFCON status to 1, both players lose the game.
So it's,
you've blown up the planet. Like
there's a balancing act to be.
Yeah. And there's ways of sort of improving and degrading the DEFCON level. I think every turn it does improve 1 point at the start of every turn or something like that.
It's supposed to be generally actions that you take yourself that lower it.
Yeah, there are, and some of the events and stuff like that do degrade the DEFCON level, and you do have to be quite careful because, like I say, some of these events have to trigger. And you don't have any real choice in it. So, like, if you're playing an event that degrades the DEFCON level and you're at level 2, then you've just blown the planet up. Well done. There's also a space race. Yeah. And the space race just really gives you points and stuff like that, really. But you do get some benefits out of getting higher up in the space race track, which are like you can play, or you can have extra cards in your hand or something like that. And you basically, you play through this game until somebody gets 20 victory points.
Yes.
And it's a tug of war, really, this victory point track, because it's got a 0 in the middle and then 20 at one side and 20 at the other.
You're trying to get it.
And you're trying to get it to your side of the 20, basically, to win the game. And you get points through, like, the space race is one thing, but there are scoring cards in the deck, and you can play them if you've got one in your hand. And it's for the different regions of the world, basically. So you'll have, like, the Middle East, or, Asia, and Europe, sort of Africa scoring and stuff like that. And basically, like, you score points for, like, if you have presence in that region, if you have control of a country in that region, then you'll get a small amount of points for it. If you've got domination in that country, which is if you own more countries than your opponent, and you have more battleground countries, because some of these countries are battleground countries, so they're just got red, their numbers are red rather than black or whatever. And they're things like Poland and South Africa and North Korea and stuff like that. Basically these really unstable countries. And if you own more of those and you own more countries, you've got domination, so you'll get more points for that. If you've got complete control of a region, which is to have more countries and all the battleground countries under your control, you get quite a lot of points for doing that. So playing these scoring cards when they're in your hand at the right time is obviously quite crucial. And because, like, you know, if you do play a scoring card, that has to be scored. You can't really get away from it. It has to be scored. So if you've got this in your hand, like I think there was a couple of times when I played it the last time where I had something like the Middle East scoring card or something like that and had no control in the Middle East whatsoever, and just sort of like made a lot of suspicious moves that turn, just pumping up control in the Middle East sort of thing.
Just so you can get... Oh, again,
just because like I'm going to have to play this. So
trying to sort of align your card playing so that it's, you know, you're going to benefit yourself. Get a wee combo together.
It's an interesting game. Some of the cards in them, like, again, they're all historically based. They're all things that happened. I mean, I've got some of them here. I mean, there's one here from the mid-war deck. How I learned to stop worrying, and that just lets you set the DEFCON level at any level you want. Yeah, which is interesting. And you got things like, you know, the Kitchener debates, nuclear submarines. What else have we got here? South African unrest. We've got a Fidel card, Fidel Castro.
Oh, nice. What does he do?
Let's have a look at this. Remove all US influence in Cuba. USSR gains sufficient influence in Cuba for control. So it basically just gives the USSR Cuba. We've got the Warsaw Pact card.
Get Castro out.
What else have we got here? The US-Japan Mutual Defence Pact.
Yes.
And that
old chestnut.
Yep. One of my personal favourite cards. Let me find it. Oh, there's a Star Wars card. Not that one. Here we go. The Iron Lady.
The rustling of cards there.
Yeah. The Iron Lady.
Yes.
So this is the Maggie Thatcher card. Is she still dead, Euan?
I think she's still going on dead.
She's pretty stable in her death, I think.
Yeah. We're not expecting it to change anytime soon.
Okay, well. The Iron Lady card, it's a pretty amusing but also very depressing card, in that the US gains a victory point automatically. It adds one USSR influence in Argentina, those damn Falkland Islands, and removes all USSR influence from the UK, and it also prevents the socialist government's event from being playable at all.
It just kills
she just comes in and kills socialism, basically.
That was the idea.
God bless her.
Well, yeah, no, it does play through. It does just sort of take you through the Cold War in Cold War style. It's a tense slog.
It's tense and it's slightly depressing.
The idea that you're both trying to win while avoiding nuclear war. It's, you know, it's because you're not sure if you can leave it to the other player to do something about the DEFCON.
That's right.
Situation.
Aye.
So you might have to deal with it yourself, or you know.
Sometimes you have to be the bigger man, Euan.
Yeah, just like Kennedy.
That's it.
He can deal with those sort of things. Yeah, no, it's an interesting game, and it's, again, I can maybe see why it probably does occupy the top spot at Board Game Geek, the number one Board Game Geek site for Board Game Geeks. Yeah, Twilight Struggle. What do you make of it, Chris?
I really like it. I mean, we got the board out earlier and had a quick look at it, because it's been a wee while since I actually played it.
Me too.
But I got the board out and I had a look at it, and you know, when I look at the box for Twilight Struggle and stuff, I just sort of think to myself, I don't know if I can handle that sort of thing. But when I got the board out and looked at it, I was like, I'm well up for a game of this again. Like, just there's something about it. I mean, even though it is really essentially just an area control game, which isn't really the kind of game that I enjoy too much, or it's not my sort of go-to game. Sorry, I do quite enjoy them, but they're not that high on my list of games I like to play, sort of thing. I still really think it's pretty good. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, again, like 1960, I mean, it's the area control aspect of it is almost like a sort of surface level thing.
Yeah,
and the kind of the wrangling and there's just that constantly shifting landscape that you have to deal with. Kind of negotiate without destroying everything. I do like the idea that it's a 2-player game you're against each other, where there is an option where you can both just lose.
Yeah, that's if you've had enough of this game, you can just deliberately degrade the DEFCON level. I think one of the things is that 1960, like, I think the landscape in 1960 changed pretty quickly. And like quite strongly as well, sort of thing. So like there would be really strong flips in 1960. I think in Twilight Struggle it's a bit more subtle and there's much more stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, it tends to be also quite events based as well. Like, so like the things you were talking about specifically, especially in like Cuba, Argentina, where you can maybe flip the influence there during certain events, but they might be quite isolated.
That's right.
But it gives you somewhere to start working from.
I think that's another one of the things, because of the layout of the map in Twilight Struggle, because it is a world map, that you do find that, whereas in 1960 the States is like, almost like a rectangle, basically, if you think about it, and you can pretty much get anywhere, whereas in Twilight Struggle, getting into South America, down into the bottom, that's South America sort of thing, is much more difficult. Compared to a map of the United States, basically. Yeah. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I get you.
It's trying to push into these corners of the world sort of thing and get control of them is not the easiest thing to do. But I think, like, both games I've really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed playing 1960 yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And there was a period while I was playing it where I was thinking, I think I might like this better than Twilight Struggle, but I'm actually thinking, towards the end of the game,
that board.
And I'm actually thinking, you know what, maybe Twilight Struggle is actually a better game. I mean, I think it's a matter of opinion, really.
Yeah.
But they do have their differences that some will appeal to some people, the other game will appeal to the other.
I would say probably in 1960 as well is a bit more streamlined and less fiddly. So
definitely.
It probably warrants a replay more, because you're able to just get back into it. I think a lot easier. Than Twilight Struggle. It's just there's a lot of intricacies to it. That
Twilight Struggle, 1960 does have a much better rulebook. Twilight Struggle is made by GMT Games, who write all their rulebooks like they're the sort of rulebooks that you saw in the 1970s from these like war games with little counters with pictures of tanks on them. That's basically how they write the rulebooks.
I didn't even know those little tanks had a war game based around them. And I think they were, by the time we came of age, they were just toys.
Aye. Well, but you know what I mean? I'm not talking about little tank models. I mean, the little chips, little counters that just have a picture of a tank or a picture of a soldier, and you've just got a massive map. It's usually full of hexes.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. See, I've never played one of these.
Yeah, well, me neither,
games,
but it's just like, that's the sort of rulebook that it makes me think of. It's just that kind of thing.
Huh.
Just like Section 8.2.
Well, if you've ever played one of those sort of games, write in and tell us about it.
Write in and tell us how we should not be slagging them off.
Aye. Stop slagging.
I believe the term for those kinds of people are grognards. That is the official term for them, I think.
You've just not made that up.
Seriously, I've not made that word up. That is an actual word.
Right.
A grognard. I think it might be French, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, until I've consulted legal counsel, I shan't be using it, but I'll allow you to continue.
Thanks. Right. Twilight Struggle. I would rate this game quite highly.
Be nice of you to rate it, yeah.
So I will give it one sickle.
One sickle?
One communist sickle.
Aye. So they'll be working the fields.
That's a full sickle. So yeah, I'm not giving them half a sickle.
Alright.
I'm actually giving my workers the full sickle.
Aye. Giving them the full sickle,
if you know what I mean.
Alright. Okay. So working the fields but no construction jobs.
No, nah.
It's a very one-sided economy.
Well, the men in Kazakhstan, they can't send those blocks out fast enough.
Aye.
I'm sure you agree with me.
Yes, I do. I'm just gonna agree with you.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
I'm just looking forward to getting those Kazakhstani blocks through.
This podcast is going to be a nightmare to edit.
I'm looking forward to it.
What do you mean? You're looking forward to it? I do it.
I like watching you though. Right.
So those two games, Twilight Struggle, 1960, worth picking up.
Yeah, both of them, I would say. Top games. Personally, I'm leaning towards 1960, but then it's I haven't played Twilight Struggle for a while.
You just
so
love Nixon, though.
I do enjoy being Nixon, and I'd enjoy giving Kennedy a go as well.
Oh, aye.
Aye. Well, I reckon most would have.
I think he's still dead as well, though, Euan.
Alright. Oh well.
Well, on that cheerful note, let's wrap up the board games there. So that's our board games Cold War. Let's move on to our video games Cold War.
Alright, we're having a Cold War with video games.
Yes.
Good.
Euan, you have been playing a blockbuster game.
I have indeed. It's probably one of the first times on this.
A proper blockbuster game.
We've sort of kept up with the times.
Other than, I've been playing Dragon Age.
Oh yeah.
I haven't played that.
Still got more to say about that.
Aye, well, I just settling into headquarters and stuff. Everything kind of took a back seat, but I'm planning on doing some more.
But Dragon Age has taken a further back seat than other things.
Aye,
it's been right at the back. It's been in the boot.
I really need to settle down, and play that game for hours rather than just dipping into it, because you can't really dip into Dragon Age. You've got to actually have a proper go at it. So,
well, going from to go into the latter stages of the Cold War, talking to proxy wars and things like that, I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
Yes.
The Phantom Limb! And I'm wondering whether actually, the thoughts occurred to me now, whether this game was in any way influenced by the Venture Brothers cartoon, just with the Phantom Limb as being a character and the constant David Bowie references. I don't know if there's if this is just a thing that they've decided to do.
I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but
it's
another one of these things that you watch.
A diamond. I'll sick the diamond dogs on him. So yeah, this is the apparently fifth in the Metal Gear franchise.
5.5.
Yeah. It's a weird one because the first Metal Gear Solid was a sequel to two previous games from much older consoles. Mm-hmm. And I think that this game itself is actually building up to the beginning of those games.
Okay.
You're playing the main antagonist from those games, Big Boss.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that they've managed to develop something that probably in those games, let's just call him Big Boss, into a legendary character. You're basically this is the first sort of open world game in the franchise. I think it's something they've decided to do, and something they've absolutely nailed. Yeah, I remember mentioning a lot of people, and there were sort of trailers for this going about a few years back. I was like, oh yeah, they're doing an open world sort of game, and just people scoffing. Probably first at the idea of Metal Gear games, and the idea of them sort of coming to the table late on sort of sandbox games.
Yeah. I've not really played many of the Metal Gear Solid games.
No.
I played the first one a bit, and I've kind of just randomly played some of the other ones at other people's houses, basically. I've never owned a Metal Gear Solid game.
Well, the first one's the iconic game. I mean, it's really... everything kind of stemmed from that. Because, really, Metal Gear Solid 2 was a sort of... It wasn't quite what people were expecting from it.
Well, this is what I've sort of... The feeling I've got from them, having not really played them, is that people have just been a bit like some of the other Metal Gear games were just weird.
Aye. Well, this... I mean... I've spoken to a few people who played the fourth one and really liked it. I did enjoy it as playing it, but I don't know, I don't think it was that great a game, and it spent a lot of time in it was really bogged down in so much sort of history and everything. The lore of these games is ridiculous now. It's just so complex and weird. But I love it as well. I mean, that's part of as a fan of these games, you know what you're getting yourself in for, and you kind of accept it. This game, despite being very open and very you do almost whatever you want in it, there's a sequence at the game that I estimate is between half an hour to 45 minutes, but it may well be an hour, I don't know, before you really get to play the game. Okay. And it's basically a long extended cutscene that teaches you the very most basic controls in the game. In a long sort of drawn out sequence. It's interesting the way they do some of them, and it's all very cinematic, and it's cool because I'm into the story. I want to know sort of what's going on, so I like being dropped in that world. It also features a man made of fire riding on a burning horse, at one point.
Obviously.
Yeah, and it's almost like daring the casual player to just put it down and walk away. But it's a game that I think anybody would enjoy. Even if you're not a fan of the whole mythos and the style of play, it's its own thing, and it's just I've just had endless fun with it, and I'm only a small way through the game.
So you're saying that anybody could play this game and enjoy it?
I think so. Yeah, I think the core sort of game essentially.
What about my girlfriend? Would she enjoy that?
Maybe not. Maybe not. If she doesn't enjoy killing, but then again, you don't have to kill. In fact, you get a higher rating in the game on certain missions for not using lethal force.
Okay.
It's always been a thing in the Metal Gear games of trying not to kill people and sort of
Well, she gets angry playing fighting games and actually throws the controller across the room and stuff. So
all right,
it's probably best that this is why I don't encourage her to game that much.
Aye. But then I would say that you're playing a fighting game. It's very sort of it's the adrenaline's pumping you, and you're really and it's an aggressive thing. You're in the moment. You might start throwing this. You're sneaking into a Russian base on Afghan soil. You're just taking your time. You wait till night time. You sort of slide in there with a stun gun and maybe a knife, and you're just getting about, stealing some resources, finding objectives, rescuing prisoners, and just you can just take your time with it. And I think if anything, she might not throw the controller across the room; it might shank you in the kidneys, before you'd even noticed.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, so maybe not.
Right.
Yeah,
there's an exception to every rule.
So this game, right?
sorry to derail you there, but
No,
I was just wanting to test your hypothesis there. So
yeah, you might as well. I do come out with some pretty weak hypotheses.
Hypothesis.
Theses has got nothing to do with it.
No.
It's urine I'm interested in. So you're basically you are Snake. Your codename in this game, Punished Venom Snake. Thankfully, that's not used on the box blurb. Again, another thing that probably just put people off. You're basically the leader of a mercenary army which you're trying to build up.
Yeah.
And this again ties into you're eventually, that is in the original Metal Gear. You are the big boss is the leader of his own mercenary army and has taken this sort of. I think he's somewhere in Africa, and you do apparently go to Africa later in this game.
Yeah.
So there may be some tie in there. I don't. Again, I've yet to get your no emailing me in spoilers and whatnot. Yeah. So you're doing various missions. There's main missions and sort of sub missions you can do around northern Afghanistan, and they've done a good job of making them quite varied as well.
Yeah.
There's just sort of prisoner extraction, finding sort of useful targets, people that could be useful to your army, securing resources, helping the local militia against the Russians who've occupied Afghanistan. One thing I would notice so far is that they keep going on about all these mujahideen in Afghanistan. I've yet to see one. All I've encountered is Russian soldiers, basically. So I don't know. Maybe they're hiding up in the mountains.
That was one of the things I meant to ask you. Actually, was that when you say you're extracting targets, so you're actually the soldiers that you're basically extracting, isn't it? It's people in the Russian army, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
So you've basically ended up with a massive mercenary army full of Russians.
Essentially, the idea is though, and the character that's one of the characters that does a lot of your briefings, Revolver Ocelot, who fans may remember from several Metal Gear games. He's in the first Metal Gear Solid as the first boss, and then he's kind of ineffectual after that. And for some reason, Hideo Kojima decided this guy is central to the story and put him in pretty much every game since then.
You never thought he was going to be important.
Yeah. Where was I?
We were talking about
extracting soldiers. Yeah. So essentially, you might sort of see skilled soldiers in the field, and you can you basically, you can extract them using a Ricky Fulton device, which you knock them out, you attach this balloon thing to them, and then they're taken back to your base.
And it dramatically sucks them up
It
into
does.
the air.
They kind of hang there for a bit, and then they go, whoa! in a sort of comedy style. The idea being that they get back there, Revolver Ocelot grabs them, basically knocks them about a bit until they agree to work for you.
Yeah.
And, lend their skills to you. So, early on, you can't understand any of the radio broadcasts that are going on around you, so you could be in a base and you might trip an alarm or something like that. You hear all these people babbling Russian, you haven't got a clue, so you can extract somebody that speaks Russian and English, and they'll sort of translate for you, and you'll get subtitles for you, and you can monitor what's going on in the radio, and you can listen to people's conversations, get intel that way.
Yep.
And there's just like a multitude of ways you can do things, and there'll be a lot. It's a lot of these kind of stealth games. Soldiers are on set patterns. They become kind of predictable.
Yeah, so you can learn somebody's pattern and then work around that.
And in this, they do tend to repeat certain locations quite a lot, and you might get used to the way where things tend to be. But in terms of like the human element of it, you're not always quite sure where people are going to be patrolling. I've always found that they seem to be slightly different every time.
Yeah.
And sometimes someone will just pop out and where was this guy? You
think weren't there before.
You've scouted the base out, you've marked out everybody, and you think, right, you're going to be fine. And then you just have to improvise. And that element of it is what I absolutely love about this game. It's just you don't know going into a mission, and you can be as stealthy as you want up to a point, but then maybe something goes wrong and you get spotted, and you just have to deal with that. You can restart the missions. The main missions are because they're graded, and you get a rank at the end of the mission.
Yeah.
I've not been too bothered about that so far. I've been just like, I want to do this one playthrough, and just see how the mission turns out. Basically, I think that's been the biggest appeal to me for doing them.
It does look quite an interesting game. I've never actually played it myself yet, but I have watched you playing quite a bit of it now, and it intrigues me, and I do kind of want to play it. And I mean, I've been quite happy watching you play it, but there's a bit of me that really wants to just get my hands on it myself. And I think one of the bits that really interests me is that whole army building aspect, because it's not just like, from what I've seen, it's not just you're just extracting some soldiers. You've got a base somewhere and stuff like that, and then you can improve it, and you can do research, and you can get new weapons and stuff like that, and you can get a dog.
I rescued a puppy, and it's now joining me in the field.
It's now running about with a knife.
It's got a knife. It can go and slit people's throats. It's a very dexterous dog.
And just like the whole thing just seems to be, it seems really, I don't know, it's smooth. Like it's like it all just seems to just work together so well. Yeah. Like you get your helicopter that takes you into a place and drops you off there, and then you can get back into it at some point and get it to take you somewhere else, and and you can call it in for support and stuff like that.
Which I did for the first time the other day, and it got blown up about a second into turning off. But it created a distraction for as long as I needed. That was my whole point.
But it does just seem like you just get dropped into this region, and then you just go and deal with whatever's there, sort of thing. And it's like you're going around picking up resources that you can use to improve your base and stuff like that, from what I've seen. And you're also picking up cassette tapes.
Oh yeah,
the cassette tapes are possibly
the
best part of this game.
Yeah,
there was just something hilarious about you coming in your helicopter with Billy Idol's Rebel Yell playing it in ridiculous volume.
Oh yes, I've almost grown bored of that, but then every so often I'll finish a mission, I'll run out, get to the landing zone, and just then you hear it coming in. I've now picked up Final Countdown, so I think that's now on there.
That'd be the tune that I would have.
Yeah, I've got that. The Man Who Sold the World, which you start off the game with anyway, which is nice for a bit of soundtrack. And you can just stick them on your player as you're running around, like killing everybody. You can go on a rampage in a base while playing She Blinded Me with Science.
And that's just that was such a nice little thing.
Well, it's like, I mean, you can. I mean, people were sort of giving me the impression, it's kind of like, it's not that open world, you have to kind of keep hopping from one place to another, but you can go around that whole map. If you want. It is a bit of a slog though, and they've kind of captured Afghanistan quite nicely. It's just a rocky
bleak
mountainous,
area,
bleak hellhole, basically, and it's kind of, it's not an easy place to get about, and you kind of you have to use the roads to a certain extent because there's in between that there's some of the bits are impassable, but they've made that seem like a natural thing. That's part of the landscape. It's just difficult to move across bits. You can't always tell where you might be able to go, so sometimes you can have to stick to the road. So you might encounter outposts that aren't necessarily important to the whatever mission you might be on, but you might have to deal with them as you go. So there's you can just sort of bolt about the place. Although one thing I've noticed is that it seems to be the longer you spend away from your base, the lower the morale of your troops grow. So you do have to go back there every so often. I've had a lot of fights breaking out and people sent to the infirmary.
I've seen the messages come up on your screen there, just like, a fight broke out in base, 2 people are in the infirmary.
And and things like that as well lower the capacity, lower the level of your certain whatever team they're on.
Yeah.
So there's like in your base, you've got your there's a like research and development team, the base development team, you've got your medical staff. I've now just got a combat team which you can send out on just other missions, which are basically sort of probability based, so you can just send your better soldiers and
just an abstracted thing.
It's quite abstracted, and it takes a certain amount of time. And it's like it'll say, there's 12 minutes, and then you'll get some rewards for it. So that keeps your resources coming in as well. You can also take out various folk from your army out into the field instead of Snake. You can just play as somebody else basically. Which can be quite interesting. I've not tried that yet because I'm quite fond of Snake. He's a main character. He's got a big bit.
But you can just play through the game as somebody else if you want by that point, sort of thing.
It has got to that point now. Although I'm not sure there's any in my army that I really trust to do the job at this point.
But it's nice that you can.
It'd be nice to chat. I'd be interested to see if I could take. It'd be good if I could take Revolver Ocelot out or Kazuhira Miller, another long time favourite. Who I don't think was supposedly in the first game, but then it turned out to be Liquid Snake, who had your mark at every... See, another thing about that first Metal Gear game, and I'm going to keep going back to this, but it is an iconic game, and it's got a memorable villain in Liquid Snake. Nya! Nya! Les enfants terribles! The man pounding the controls of his clearly on fire helicopter, going, "Now, why don't you work, damn you?" Who seems to have Snake's number at every moment throughout the game, but yet still somehow manages to lose. In fact, one thing that I've noticed through all these games is that they've now done a couple of prequels about Big Boss, and the whole history of this sort of world, and. It just occurs to me, especially after Metal Gear Solid 4, that Solid Snake from the first game, who's supposed to be the big hero and everything, and the whole mythos sort of ends with him essentially.
Yeah,
it's just a bit of a chump, just like a clueless patsy. Everything happens to him rather than like him really affecting events in any way. Yeah, and you do just get this feeling like nobody cares about this guy anymore. He's just And now you're moving on to the history of Big Boss, and like this is a much more interesting character.
Yeah.
It doesn't really say much because they probably couldn't afford Kiefer Sutherland. It's a bizarre choice for this game. Probably one of my only criticisms of this game is the fact that they dropped David Hayter as the voice of Snake and brought in Kiefer Sutherland, who, from what I can see, has done very little work in this game. I think he probably did it from a hotel room somewhere. With with a pie in one hand,
it's a last minute thing,
and a tab in the other. Just I'll do your game. Not really committing to the whole premise.
So another question for you: if somebody had told you, like when you first started playing the first Metal Gear Solid game, when did that come out? That was mid-90s.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. I mean, it was kind of like an early PlayStation game. It was like the big sort of showcase.
Of the PlayStation 1 games, wasn't it? Yeah. But so say that you had just finished playing the first Metal Gear Solid game. If somebody told you that the 5th installment of Metal Gear Solid was going to involve a lot of resource management, would you have believed them?
No, I absolutely would not have done.
Because it feels like that is just such a massive difference in the series, really.
Yeah, they've done a lot with this game, and the fact I think that's the thing. Going back to the idea of people, sort of they coming quite late in the game to the whole sort of sandbox thing. They've really nailed it, while still trying to make like a kind of, because these games are always going to be quite narratively driven. Sort of, that's the way Hideo Kojima, he just writes reams and reams of dialogue and exposition. You can't escape that. But they've still really kind of taken elements. I mean, the thing that I kept thinking about was Far Cry.
Yeah.
Playing Far Cry, and sort of in the early stages anyway, this game, sort of scouting out a base and then taking it, reminded me a bit of playing Far Cry. But then I realised like how much more complex and varied each base and how dealing with a specific base would be compared to something like Far Cry, which I think is a lot of other games have probably taken cues from. Everything always seemed a bit generic in that, you were sort of taking a base, it always kind of went the same way, and it'd be,
just the same things to do,
same number of guys or whatever. But in this, it could go in a number of ways. I mean, one of the things is you can start just like opening fire on a base, start taking guys out, and they'll get on the radio to their superiors. And it's a gamble whether or not they'll send anyone to back them up. Sometimes they'll go, nah, you're on your own, mate, and just leave them to it. Sometimes they'll be okay, and they'll, a truck will turn up and a bunch of guys. You don't quite know what's going to happen. So it's another constantly evolving landscape of Cold War gameage.
I'm glad you linked back to the Cold War there.
Yeah, I had to bring it round.
I mean, it's kind of... When is this game set?
It is set in the 80s during...
so it is definitely during the Cold War.
Yeah, it's the Soviet
we're not just talking about this pointlessly here.
No, it's definitely involved. And that's the other thing as well, is the sort of willingness to embrace kind of the history, like military history as well. Hideo Kojima seems to be very into his military history, especially like the kind of like 20th century... Black Ops and kind of like the Cold War stuff. And in fact, I think with this game, if anything, this series of games has just allowed him more time to research sort of Cold War, like dodgy military history, because he seems to have gotten more and more knowledgeable about it as the games have gone on, and they've become more and more about those things, and they're sort of more and more grounded in these sort of real life events, while still having insane things like giant robots and burning men and like flying children in gimp suits flying about the place, and weird zombie soldier things as a kind of like just sitting side by side. And there's even something about, I think, just about the animation and the look of the game that is distinctly Metal Gear. It hasn't lost something that makes it.
Yeah, I know what you're
Metal
talking
Gear.
about.
I can't quite describe it, but they keep in things in all these games, like they always little sounds, like when the ammo is full, you get a certain sound effect.
Oh yeah, when you get spotted, they've still got that classic noise from the first Metal Gear Solid game.
So like little things like that, and certain things about the way it looks, like always keep you, if you're a fan of those games, always kind of keep you feeling a bit cozy. But don't distract from the game overall. Really.
It's the old and the new meeting, I think.
I think this is finally the time they've cracked it, and it seems to be apparently like the last one of these games they're going to make. So it's a shame, but I guess go out on a high.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid, you're absolutely loving it then.
I
can tell you're loving it.
Absolutely loving it.
You love any game that involves going around collecting cassette tapes.
Aye.
Metal Gear Solid, Shenmue.
Yeah, it's been a running theme, actually.
It's been a running theme. Well, since we've moved into the headquarters,
it's tape
you've just been collecting
games.
Cassette tapes.
Yeah, pretty much. Hippity Hop from Shenmue, check it out. It's on YouTube. All the tunes. We were listening to it the other day while we were playing a game. Yeah. No, it's definitely, and it's nice to keep up to date with games that are coming out and actually really enjoy them. So
yeah, good.
I'm pleased with that one. That was a good purchase. I will mention as well, I bought it for the PS3
by accident.
By accident, because I'd been to two places already where it was out of stock, and I just went in and grabbed the first case that was there, and I didn't realise it was a PS3 one until I got home. By that point, I was like, do you know what? I don't care. There's a PS3 here. I'm going to play it.
Cool. I'm going to buy the PS4 version.
Yeah, maybe you should, so you can play it on your own profile.
Aye. Well,
rather than
you've been playing it on that for a while.
I actually noticed one of the medals come up on your Facebook thing the other day.
I'm just, it's slightly annoying me, but
is it?
I'm letting you off with it because you're enjoying yourself so
right,
much.
Okay. Aye. Don't take it away from me.
Right. So that's Metal Gear Solid 5. Will you keep us updated on that then?
I will do. Probably will have more to say. There'll be more little incidents. There's always little things happening. Just like the other day, I was going along past a load of donkeys. They suddenly startled, and one of them ran straight into the side of my horse and knocked itself out.
Excellent.
So I will bring you stories from the battlefront. This is the thing. I've been playing that game. I've been supposedly Snake's in Afghanistan, and he's seen more donkeys than he has Arabs. So make of that what you will.
I will. Right. Okay. Well, let's move on. So I'm quite conscious of the time now. This episode is running on a bit, but I want to quickly talk about a little game that's on Steam.
Yeah.
And it has been out for I think more than a year now, at least. And
I've heard it doing the rounds. I've heard it mentioned.
And it ties in with our Cold War theme because it's set in a sort of fictional, what would appear to be sort of Eastern European country. It's called Papers, Please.
Papers, Please.
Papers, Please. And
the times for preference.
A weird game which you have called a work simulator, which it really is.
What you were describing to me sounded like a work simulator.
It is a work simulator, but it's a really sort of grim and slightly depressing work simulator. So it's set in.
I don't think that anything could be more depressing than a work simulator, but there you go.
It's set in what about Surgeon Simulator? That's amazing.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
But it's set in 1982.
Yeah,
towards the end of 1982, so a cold winter. Like I say, in a sort of fictional Eastern European state called Arstotzka, I believe it's called. Glory to Arstotzka. And you are playing the role of a border guard. The game starts with you getting a letter, which is basically saying that you have been designated as a border guard. This is clearly a communist country.
Right.
And you have been given a grade 8 dwelling to live in with your family. So off you go, you get sent off to work, and you're given this manual, which is just this little book of the rules of the border guard. And at first, the only rules are really that foreigners require a passport, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And all that really happens is at the start of the game, somebody will walk up to your little counter, and it's all sort of like, it's really pixelated sort of thing,
I was going to say, I'd seen some screenshots that you'd put up, and it all seemed to be that sort of, very old school.
Very old school pixelated thing. So somebody will walk up, and then their little pixelated face will walk in front of your border guard screen, and they'll put their passport through, and then you drag the passport onto this little desk thing that you've got, and that opens up the document sort of thing.
Just using a mouse?
Just using your mouse, yeah.
Okay.
And you have to check it, and then you have to just make sure the passport hasn't expired, that the person on it looks the same, that their gender is correct, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then if it's fine, you stamp it approved, you give it back to them, and then they go through, or you can deny them if something's wrong. And you have to bring up this little discrepancy thing, so there's a little button that you can press, and then you can click on something like the date, and then click on your your little date thing, which tells you the actual date sort of thing, and that will say discrepancy detected if the passport's expired, for example, and then you can deny them entry that way.
Okay.
But the game starts to get more complicated as it goes on, so then foreigners that are coming in start requiring some sort of permit, some travel document or something like that states why they're there. And then when they come in, you have to ask them, why are you here? And if they say they're here for work and their permit says they're here for, to visit family, then you can pull them up for it and just say that doesn't correlate with what this says, and you can deny them entry. Other things like people from your own country, from Arstotzka, they need an ID card to get through. And again, you've got to check all these little things. Foreign countries, in your manual, you've got a list of all the foreign countries and all the cities in that country that issue passports, and if somebody comes in with a passport, and this is the one thing that always trips me up, because trying to learn all of these cities off by heart is extremely difficult. And sometimes it's just like the country that's the city that's on it isn't one of the cities that's listed in this manual.
Are the cities and countries in this game all made up as
they're
well?
All fictional.
Right,
they're all completely fictional, but they all seem to be roughly based on some sort of real places, almost. Like there's one that's kind of like Japan, and there's one that's kind of like sort of maybe the US or the UK sort of thing, and the other sort of like Eastern European places, that kind of thing.
Okay. But
it just starts to like, there is a sort of story going through this game as well. So like, you know, you're a border guard, but like on the second or third day, somebody goes through and blows the place up. And then, you know, terrorist bombings are starting to happen. Anybody from this country, you now have to start scanning them. And then, you know, the next day, the government of that country complains that all their citizens are being scanned, so you have to stop doing it, but then you've got to start doing all these other things.
Right.
And it just becomes this sort of, like, you're up against the clock, and you get paid depending on how many things you get right. But you have to take your time with these things, because if you keep getting things wrong, if you let people through and there's something wrong with their documents, or if you deny entry to somebody who should have got in, or something like that, then you get 2 warnings, and then you start getting fined for everyone after that on that day, sort of thing.
And eventually you're taken out and shot.
Well, what happens is, because you're living with your family in this dwelling, at the end of every day you have to pay your bills. And you have to decide whether you want to feed your family and give them heat.
Right.
And and it just starts to get really depressing, because it's like, if you don't, like, if you just decide that, like, I can't afford to give them food this round, then people might start getting sick, you know, and then you start to feel this like proper sort of inner turmoil sort of thing, just like, oh god, my son's ill.
Family.
Like, you know, it's like, I need to feed them tonight. I need to just start, you know, like, probably doing my job properly here and getting the right people in, and it's just has this sort of grim feeling, but the same, it's really tongue in cheek, you know. It is really tongue in cheek. I mean, there are some comedy moments in it. You know, you get this guy that comes up on like the first or second day who doesn't have a passport, but he's really cheerful, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I love your country" and all this sort of thing. But you're just like, "Look, mate, where's your passport?" And he's like, "I don't have one. I don't need one." And then you're just like, "Go away," you know. And he comes back the next day and he's got a hand-drawn passport that he's done himself, and you're just like, "Look, mate, go away." And he comes back the next day with a real passport, but he doesn't have a permit, so you've got to send him away again. Eventually, he turns up with all the right stuff, and you sit there and look at all this stuff, and you think, there has to be something wrong with this. There has to be something wrong. This guy is weird. But it just
how's he suddenly just worked out what a passport is and got himself one?
It just turns out that he has the right stuff, and then you let him through, and then you get he gives you a little token thing, and then there's like sort of like mini achievements that you can get. So like, you can build up a collection of these tokens, and each one's for doing a different thing, sort of thing, and it's just that so you get these little things going on. There's other wee storyline things, like there's these weird people that turn up wearing masks and stuff, and they give you a sort of code thing that you have to decipher. So while you're sitting checking people's passports, you're like looking at this thing, trying to work out. You've got they give this little template thing that goes over a sheet that has lots of letters on it, and if you get the holes lined up properly, they spell somebody's name, and you have to let that person through. Unfortunately, because of the stress of the job, I didn't let either of the 2 people through that I should have, in order to get the storyline going. So I messed it up, but because I was just too stressed out about checking everybody's passport that I just completely missed the names and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's just such a weird game, but it's so much, like, so addictive, and it's actually quite fun. Like, despite its grimness and all that, there's enough sort of tongue-in-cheek and weird story stuff in it that it keeps you interested.
There's a lot of cruel games out there.
There are a lot of cruel games. I don't know if this is a cruel game. I think this is just...
I don't know. I just think it's your exploitative indie gamers. I find it in poor taste, to be perfectly honest.
You're just saying that to be controversial.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Aye. I mean, you're like extracting donkeys and stuff in Metal Gear Solid and sending them flying up into the air. And you're telling me a lonely
hilarious.
border guard that I'm a terrible person.
Now you actually believe you're a border guard. I mean, that's how disturbing this is.
I'm not a border guard. I'm not.
Just you keep telling yourself that.
My son's ill.
Please do keep telling yourself
My
that.
son.
I don't want to have to wake up.
Think of the children.
I don't want to have to come out one morning and find you checking people's passports.
You're not getting out that door, mate.
There's like a red, yellow and red cordon.
Oh, you better be careful, because there is a point in the game where you're given a gun.
Alright.
Because people start trying to jump the queue and get across the border, and you can shoot them. That's because of government cuts, because you do have border security guards there at first.
Alright, but then they're just
and then they get sent off.
They
get sent away. So you're basically there as not only, you know, checking people's passports, but shooting people that are trying to get through.
So it's not going well in this country.
Nah, things are going a bit grim.
Right,
but,
okay.
Nah, this is a fictional Eastern European place, you know, like Poland.
Aye.
That's also a fictional European place.
Well, we'll tell you about Poland. But...
Yes.
So yeah.
I mean, I would recommend Papers, Please. It's just a fun little game.
Okay.
Fun and slightly depressing, but fun nonetheless.
One for the steam heads out there.
One for the steam heads. Go for it.
Punks.
So I think that pretty much wraps up our Cold War episode.
I think that does bring us to a neat little close there.
How Cold War do you feel?
I feel like I've warmed up a bit now.
All right.
Over the course of talking about the Cold War.
You're going to bring the wall down.
I am. Yes, I am. It's been cathartic, just talking about the Cold War, and now we're able to bury the hatchet.
Have we resolved it now?
I think we have.
We've finally resolved
we've laid it to
all
rest.
those hangovers of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Good.
Putin can ride off into the sunset on his on one of his stallions if he isn't too busy punching or shagging it.
Big fans of Putin on this show.
Oh yeah,
Big fans.
He's a hilarious chap.
Right, so got anything else to add, Euan?
No, it's been a pleasure doing a mildly themed episode. I've realised actually there's one game that we didn't. Is Kolaika, which we may have to return to. We may have to do a second Cold War. We may have to reignite
games to loosely base on another Cold War episode.
We may have to reignite the Cold War.
Aye.
And degrade the DEFCON level.
Let's get cold again.
In future, yeah. Well, we'll do that when our heating breaks down again, after it's been fixed.
Oh man, I'm not wanting to talk about that.
No, that's not for podcast ears.
Right, well, this has been interesting.
It's been fun.
Yeah, again,
it's been a fulsome episode as well.
Fulsome.
Hope you enjoyed us back to our normal feature length episode.
Yeah.
Rather than the little miniature curiosity that we put out last week.
It wasn't as miniature as I thought it was, actually.
No.
It was a bit shorter than usual. So, yes, thank you for listening yet again. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, or if you want to become a contributor to the show, if you want to maybe record a 5 or 6 minute segment to put on episodes of the show.
As you heard last week.
Yep, as you heard Pawel last week, who will be returning to the show next week. He has sent us something, but he's a bit late for us to actually deal with it.
We realised at the just before this episode that we just weren't going to.
Yeah, we weren't going to be able to deal with that tonight.
Yeah. So what we might have to do is go through what he's recorded and overdub any time he said last week with on a previous week.
But yeah, if you want to become a contributor, or if you have questions or comments or anything like that, then you can leave us a message on our Facebook page, or you can email us at firstplayertoken@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I've set up a Twitter thing, but there's nothing on it yet.
All right.
So I'll deal with that, and hopefully next week we'll actually have some sort of content on there.
That's good. Everybody loves content.
We all love content.
Yeah, we all do love content, and hopefully Chris will be tweeting out some content at you.
I was actually thinking about another thing that we could do in this, if we could get some suggestions for it, which was, I was remembering today about my cousin once challenged me to play through the first part of Final Fantasy VII, all the way up to the part where you go on the date with Aerith and the Golden Saucer, which was quite far into the game, for what I believe. I think it's towards the end of the first disc or something
He challenged you to play this?
He challenged me to do it for the sole reason that he never believed that you could actually get Barrett to go on the date with you and not Aerith.
Ah, right.
If you made the correct choices throughout the whole game, you could get Barrett to go on the date with you.
Okay.
Which is basically to agree with everything that Barrett said and disagree with everything that everybody else said. And then Barrett goes on a date with you and not Aerith.
I can imagine it's a wonderful
And he
date.
did not believe me, and he challenged me to do it in a night, and it started off at about 10 o'clock at night or something, and to do it before the sun came up. And I did manage it.
Good.
I was only about 15 at the time. So I was actually thinking,
You did love that game.
If people have any gaming challenges for us, like something in that vein, it can be board gaming or video gaming or anything like that, it has to be sensible. I'm not staying up for 3 days straight.
Aye. Well, I mean, send in the challenge and
not-
we'll decide whether
Yeah.
it's something that's
Exactly, yeah.
within the realms of possibility or not.
I'm not playing Twilight Imperium in the back of a tramp or anything like that. But just do some sort of sensible suggestion. We will listen and we'll see what we can do with it, and we'll document the process and we'll put it on the podcast.
I think that would be the point of it, really.
Yep, that would be the point. Of it.
So yeah, that'll be a segment. You send us in the ideas because we don't have any.
Aye, I might challenge you to something. Whoops.
All right.
But we'll see.
Well, if you come up with a challenge, I'll decide whether I can be bothered or not.
Right, so again, that's firstplayertoken@gmail.com or our Facebook page, which is the large and unnecessary First Player Token. So that's it from us.
Yes.
This has been episode 6 of the large and unnecessary First Player Token podcast.
Da. And I have been Christian Leon Hard, the vampire from Cold War Russia.
And I've been Chris, thanks for listening.
Goodbye!